I was burning up. Maya, I think I'm dying. I croaked, my voice coming out as a raspy whisper. Can you hand me my phone? I need to call Jake. My roommate Maya pulled off her gaming headset, concern flickering across her face as she saw me curled into a miserable ball under my blanket. She grabbed the nearest phone from her desk and shoved it into my trembling hand. Here, hurry up. You look like shit, Sage. I didn't even check the screen, and my thumb found the contact labeled brother at the very top of the list. Jake always insisted on being my emergency contact, my first call, my safety net. 23 years of marriage, and that man still treated me like I was the only woman in the world. I pressed dial. The line clicked. Hello. Jake, I'm so sick. I whimpered, letting all the pathetic vulnerability bleed into my voice. I feel like I'm literally melting. Can you come get me, please? A pause. A long, loaded pause that stretched just a beat too long. Sage. Since when do you call me by my full name? I'm practically on my deathbed here. 2 more seconds of silence. Then his voice came through again, lower this time, tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Hesitation? Confusion? It's the middle of the night. You want me to come get you now? Yes, now. I can't even stand up, Jake. My legs are noodles. Please, just come. I hung up before he could argue. My head was pounding too hard for negotiations. Maya pressed a cool washcloth to my forehead, and I nearly wept at the relief. Your husband's at Sea State, right? That's like a 40-minute drive. You're gonna be fully cooked by the time he gets here. He'll make it work, I said, eyes already drifting shut. He always does. When I got appendicitis sophomore year, he broke like 6 traffic laws getting to me. Jake doesn't mess around when I'm sick. Maya snorted. Must be nice having a ride or die. Yeah, I murmured, already half convinced I was hallucinating the warmth spreading through my chest. He's kind of the best. For minutes later, a sharp knock cut through my fever dreams. Then voices, 2 of them, low and muffled through the door. Why is it you? Your sister called me. Where's she? My eyes snapped open. That was too fast. Way too fast. Jake couldn't have possibly. I scrambled out of bed, my legs nearly giving out as my foot missed the ladder rung. The world tilted. I was already falling when an arm hooked around my waist, catching me mid-plummet, hauling me against something solid and warm. You're burning up. Not a question. A statement. Flat. Clinical. Rom. I blinked up at the face hovering over mine. Jake. Definitely Jake. Same sharp jawline. Same dark eyes. Same. No, something was different. His hair was shorter. His shoulders seemed broader. And when I breathed in, the scent was off. Not Jake's usual sandalwood and coffee, but something cleaner, sharper. Like rain on concrete. Didn't I tell you I was sick? I mumbled, squinting up at him. You didn't hear me? His expression flickered. A muscle jumped in his jaw. No. Just that. One word. Flat and final. Maya threw a fleece robe over my shoulders. You need to get to the ER like yesterday. Go, go, go. My husband, if it was my husband, hoisted me onto his back without a word. I felt every ridge of muscle shift beneath his shoulders as he adjusted his grip on my thighs. Wait, Jake. My case. On my desk. The blue one. He paused. Then, I'll get it. That was wrong too. Jake would have already grabbed it. He knew which blue case, my contact lenses. He'd been reminding me to take them out at night for 12 years. He could find them blindfolded. Something was very, very wrong. But my brain was too fogged to process what. I let my head drop against his shoulder and closed my eyes. The car was dark, silent except for the hum of the engine and the soft hiss of tires on wet asphalt. I watched my husband drive from the passenger seat, studying his profile against the street lights flashing by. Jake always filled silence with chatter. He'd be lecturing me right now about wearing a jacket, about not pushing myself too hard, about all the things I should have done differently. He'd be angry, but it would be the angry of someone who cared too much to let go. This man just drove. Eyes straight ahead, hands at 10, and 2 like he was taking a driving test. He didn't even glance at me. Hey, I said, my voice still scratchy. Did you grab my case? A beat. In my pocket. Without thinking, I reached for his pants pocket. His thighs went rigid beneath my fingers, muscles locking up so hard I could feel the tension through his jeans. The other pocket. Jacket. I blinked. He never wore jackets. Jake ran hot, always. I fumbled with his coat pocket and pulled out a small blue box. Squinted at it in the dim light. 0 feelings ultra thin. My brain short-circuited. Jake, what the hell is this? I held it up, my voice climbing an octave despite the raw burn in my throat. I asked for my contact lens case. Not this. Why do you even have? He snatched the box out of my hand so fast I flinched, shoved it back into his pocket without a word. Then, with the same mechanical precision, he reached for his other pocket and handed me a different blue box. Means choing gaim. Not my contact lenses. Not even close. But the way he reacted, like I'd caught him red-handed. My stomach turned, and I wasn't sure if it was the fever or something else. You look different tonight, I said slowly, studying his profile again. His hands on the steering wheel, the set of his shoulders, the way the shadows played across his face. Couldn't sleep, he said. Flat. Evasive. You got a haircut? Maybe. Maybe. You don't remember if you got a haircut? I don't want to talk right now. That stung. Jake never said that. He always wanted to talk. He dragged conversations out of me even when I was too exhausted to form sentences. But this man just pressed the gas a little harder and stared through the windshield like I wasn't even there. The ER was half empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects. I sat on the examination table, shivering despite the thin blanket someone had thrown over my shoulders, watching my husband's silhouette through the glass partition. He was on his phone, head down, fingers moving fast. His shoulders were hunched, his body language screaming evasion even from 30 feet away. When the nurse came to start my 4, I tried to look brave, but the moment the needle hovered over my vein, my hand shot out and grabbed the nearest solid thing. Which was him. He'd come back into the room without me noticing. Close your eyes, he said, his voice softer now but still distant. You can handle this. His palm covered my eyes, warm and dry, but his hand was bigger than Jake's. His fingers were longer. The calluses were in different places. I didn't say anything. I just let him hold my hand while the nurse fumbled with my veins, and I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. Cold, I whispered when the fore fluid hit my veins. Heik, I'm freezing. I reached for his waist, planning to press myself against him the way I always did when I was sick and miserable. Jake would wrap his arms around me and tell me everything was going to be okay. He'd kiss my forehead and whisper that he loved me, even when I was gross and sweaty and pathetic. This man sidestepped. I'll find you a warmer blanket. He was gone before I could react, just walked out, left me sitting there with my arms still reaching toward empty air. I stared at the door swinging shut behind him, and for the first time that night, my fever-fogged brain started to clear. That wasn't Jake. That couldn't be Jake. Jake would never leave me alone in an ER. Jake would hold my hand and crack terrible jokes and refuse to let go. Jake had promised me, 23 years ago, that he'd always be right there. This man didn't even want me to touch him. Here, drink this. He was back. I hadn't even seen him re-enter. He pressed a cup of something hot into my hands. Herbal tea, I realized, something bitter and medicinal, and watched me drink it with those strange, guarded eyes. Now what? I asked, more sharply than I intended. You're gonna medicate me and leave? His jaw tightened. Drink it. You need to sweat it out. I need my husband. I set the cup down and looked up at him. Really looked. The fluorescent lights didn't soften his features. If anything, they made him sharper, harder. What's going on with you tonight? You've barely said 2 words to me, and you won't even let me touch you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then his eyes flickered down to my hands, still curled around the teacup, and something softened in his expression. You're sick. Just get some rest, Sage. Say it. Say what? Tell me you love me. He blinked. Once. Twice. The silence stretched so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. You're my... He stopped himself. Swallowed. You're going to be fine. That's not what I ask. I know. He ran a hand through his hair. Shorter hair, I noticed again. Cut differently than Jake's, and let out a breath. I know. He reached for my hand and squeezed it once, quick and impersonal, before letting go. Sleep, he said. I'll be here. I didn't sleep. I lay there with my eyes half shut, watching him through my lashes, cataloging every detail. The way he held himself. The way his phone was always just slightly angled away from me. The way he checked his watch every 11 minutes like he was counting down to something. And when I drifted off, I dreamed my husband, the real one, the one who held me when our parents died, when I lost my job, when the world felt like it was collapsing. The one who promised he'd never leave. I woke up crying. Hey. His voice was gentler now, softer around the edges. Hey, you're okay. You're safe. His thumb brushed the tears from my face, and I grabbed his wrist without thinking. Tell me everything is going to be okay. His eyes locked on mine. He was so close I could see the flecks of gold in his irises, the way his pupils dilated when I touched him. Everything is going to be okay, he said. His voice cracked on the last word. I promise. Promise me you're not going anywhere. I'm not. Promise me you're still my husband. He went still. The air between us turned to ice. Sage. Promise me. I was sobbing now, ugly and desperate and sick, but I didn't care. Just tell me, are you still mine? He stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then he pulled me against his chest and held me so tight I couldn't breathe. Yours, he said, his voice rough and uneven. Always yours. And somewhere in my fevered brain, I realized that he'd said it wrong. Jake said forever. He always said forever. This man said always. Like there was a limit, like he knew something I didn't. But I was too exhausted to push further. I let him hold me, let his warmth seep into my bones, and told myself that I was being paranoid. He was my husband. He had to be. Because if he wasn't, then who the hell had been holding me all night? I woke up in my dorm room with no memory of how I got there. Maya was already gone for her morning classes, and the sun was streaming through our grimy window, and I felt like I'd been hit by a bus and then put through a washing machine. But I was alive. Alive and mostly coherent, which was more than I'd felt 12 hours ago. I checked my phone. 5 messages from Jake. Hey babe, you feeling better? I called the dorm, but no one answered. You left your charger here last weekend. Want me to drop it off? You up yet? I'm wedded. Okay, seriously, text me back or I'm coming over. The nurse at the ER just called me. She said you were there last night? What happened? I froze. The ER had called Jake. My Jake. The real Jake. Which meant that the man who had held my hand all night, who had carried me to the car and fed me tea and held me while I cried, wasn't him. I scrolled back up, checked my outgoing calls. The number I dialed last night wasn't Jake's contact. It was Maya's. Maya's phone, with Maya's brother contact at the top of the list. Maya's brother. Maya, whose full name was Maya Carver, whose older brother was... Oh, God. Oh, God, no. The night came flooding back. Every humiliating detail. Every pathetic, needy, desperate thing I'd said. Tell me you love me. You're still my husband, right? Promise me you're not going anywhere. I buried my face in my pillow and screamed. Then I grabbed my phone and typed with shaking fingers. Maya, who was that last night? Her reply came almost instantly. Who do you think? My brother, obviously. Why? I stared at the screen. Maya's brother. A man I'd met maybe twice in passing. A man who was, by all accounts, cold and distant and emotionally unavailable. A man who, apparently, had spent an entire night holding me, reassuring me, promising he was mine. This was a disaster. But the worst part, the part one couldn't stop replaying in my head, was the way he looked at me when he said, always. Like he'd meant it. Like he'd always meant it. And that's when I started to wonder. 23 years, and my husband had never once looked at me like that. 23 years, and I never realized. 23 years, and I was only just now starting to see. What else had I been wrong about? Hashtag chapter 2, the cracks in the glass. I spent the next 48 hours pretending everything was normal. It was the hardest performance of my life. Every time Jake texted, asterisk, you feeling better? Asterisk, asterisk, want me to bring you soup? Asterisk, I miss you. I typed back something cheerful and bland. Asterisk, much better. Asterisk, asterisk, no need, I've got leftovers. Asterisk, asterisk, miss you too. Asterisk, lies. All of it. Because I couldn't stop replaying that night. The way he held me. The way he looked at me. The way he said always like it meant something more than forever ever could. And I couldn't stop thinking about that blue box. Zero feelings ultra thin. Jake and I hadn't used condoms in years. We've been trying for a baby. Trying and failing month after month. The grief piling up in silent, unspoken layers. So why did my husband have a box of ultra thins in his jacket pocket? I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a free sample. Maybe he grabbed it by accident. Maybe you're just paranoid. But paranoia was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when I'd spent 23 years building my entire life around a man who might have been building his around someone else. Saturday morning, I drove home. Jake was in the kitchen when I walked in, flipping pancakes with a kind of easy domesticity that had always made my heart soft. He turned when he heard the door, his face breaking into that familiar, crooked grin. Sage, you're up. I was about to bring you breakfast in bed. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me, pressing a kiss to my forehead. His hands were warm. His scent was sandalwood and coffee. Everything exactly as it should be. And yet, when I hugged him back, I noticed the way his shoulders tensed. Just slightly. Just for a second. You smell different, I said, pulling away. Different how? Like cologne. You don't wear cologne. He laughed. Too quick, too bright. It's a new deodorant. You don't like it? I shrugged. It's fine. But it wasn't fine, because Jake had never cared about deodorant. He bought the same unscented brand for 12 years. And now, suddenly, he smelled like something expensive and unfamiliar. I filed it away in the growing mental folder labeled things that don't add up. We ate pancakes. We talked about my classes, his work, the usual small talk that filled the spaces between us. He asked about my fever. I told him I was fine. I didn't mention the ER. I didn't mention who'd taken me. I didn't mention the blue box. Instead, I waited. At noon, Jake announced he had to run some errands. Grocery run. Need anything? Nope. I'll probably take a nap. He kissed my cheek and left. I watched his car disappear down the driveway, counted to 60, and then moved. His laptop was in the home office, still open. He'd been using it last night. I knew his password. Asterisk our anniversary asterisk, because he'd never bothered to change it. Why would he? We trusted each other. I sat down, opened his browser history, and started scrolling. Mostly normal stuff. Sports scores, news articles, YouTube videos about woodworking, his latest hobby. Then I found it. A private messaging tab, still logged in. A conversation with a contact named T. The messages were deleted, but the timestamps were there. Late nights, early mornings, times when he told me he was working late. My hands were shaking as I opened his email. There was a confirmation for a hotel reservation. Last week. A 2-night stay at a boutique place downtown. Paid with his personal credit card. He told me he was on a business trip. I closed the laptop, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. The phone buzzed in my pocket while I was still gripping the sink. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but some stupid, reckless instinct made me answer. Hello. Sage. A pause. A voice I recognized. Low, careful, like he was testing each word before he let it out. It's Ryan, Maya's brother. I nearly dropped the phone. How did you? Maya gave me your number. I hope that's okay. Another pause. I wanted to apologize. For the other night, I should have told you who I was. Apologize. My laugh came out hollow, almost hysterical. Ryan, you held my hand while I cried and called you my husband. You don't owe me an apology. I owe you a restraining order, maybe. A soft huff of air. Almost a laugh. You were sick. And honestly, Sage, I didn't mind. My heart stuttered. You didn't mind being mistaken for my husband? I minded that you were scared. I minded that you thought he'd abandoned you. His voice dropped lower, rougher. But being the one who held you, that I didn't mind. I opened my mouth to respond. Nothing came out. I'm not trying to make this weird, he said quickly. I wanted you to know, and I wanted to see if you were okay, because the way you were crying, Sage, that wasn't just fever. That was real pain. I closed my eyes and let the silence stretch. Because he was right. It was real pain, and I'd been carrying it alone for longer than I wanted to admit. I think my husband is cheating on me, I said. The words hung in the air between us, raw and ugly and true. Ryan didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, what makes you think that? The usual. Late nights. Deleted messages. A hotel reservation he lied about. I swallowed hard. And a box of condoms in his jacket that we haven't needed in years. He's an idiot. Excuse me? Your husband. If he's cheating on you, he's an idiot. Because he stopped himself. Sorry, that's not my place. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You're right. He is an idiot, but that doesn't make it hurt less. We talked for another 10 minutes. I told him about Jake's late nights, his evasiveness, the way he'd started guarding his phone like it contained state secrets. Ryan listened without interrupting, and when I was done, he said, give me your address. I'm coming over. Ryan, that's not. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I just think you shouldn't be alone right now. And I owe you a proper face-to-face apology, anyway. I gave him the address. He showed up 40 minutes later with coffee and a bakery box of pastries. You didn't have to do this, I said, letting him in. Seriously, I'm fine. You're crying. I touched my cheek. It was wet. Ha, so I am. He set the coffee on the counter and turned to face me. In the daylight, he was even more striking than I remembered. Taller than Jake, leaner, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to see straight through me. Sage. He said my name like it was something fragile. You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to... What, exactly? I laughed. Bitter and broken. Cry on your shoulder? I already did that, remember? You got the whole performance. Emotional breakdown. Fever, the works. I remember. He stepped closer, and I meant what I said. I didn't mind. You keep saying that, because it's true. We stood there, 3 feet apart, with the afternoon light streaming through the kitchen windows and my husband's betrayal lurking in every shadow. I don't understand, I said. We've barely spoken. You don't know me. Why do you care so much? Ryan looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers barely grazing my skin. Because I've been watching you for years, Sage. Maya talks about you all the time. I've seen your photos. I've heard your voice on the phone when I call her. And every time, I'd think, asterisk, that's the kind of woman I'd want to know. Asterisk, he dropped his hand. Then I held you in the ER and I realized I didn't just want to know you. I wanted to be the one you needed. I couldn't breathe. Ryan. I know. This is insane. You're married. I'm your roommate's brother. But you called me last night because you were desperate, and I showed up because I dropped everything for you. That's not nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. You don't even know me, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. I know you always pick the coffee flavor that everyone else avoids, and I know you cry during dog commercials. I know you tap your foot when you're nervous and bite your lip when you're thinking. He smiled, rueful and soft. Maya talks stuff a lot. I let out a shaky breath. That's terrifyingly detailed. I'm observant. And impulsive? You drove all the way here because your sister's roommate was sad. He shrugged. I'm a lot of things. Impulsive is probably on the list. Another buzz. My phone. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Jake. Hey, I said, forcing brightness into my voice. What's up? Sage, where are you? I'm home. I froze. I thought you were running errands. I finished early. I wanted to surprise you. A beat. The front door was unlocked. Are you here? Ryan caught my eye. I shook my head frantically, pressing a finger to my lips. Actually, I went for a walk, I said. Needed some air. I'll be back in 20. Okay. Hurry up, though. I miss you. He hung up. Ryan was already moving toward the back door. I'll go out this way. Call me if you need me. Ryan, wait. He turned. Thank you. For the coffee. And I gestured vaguely. Everything. He gave me a slow, crooked smile that made my stomach flip. Anytime, Sage. And I mean that. Then he was gone. I walked back inside 20 minutes later to find Jake standing in the living room, his phone in his hand, his face unreadable. Hey, he said. Feel better? Getting there. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good, because I've been thinking, maybe we should take a trip. Just the two of us. Get away from everything. A trip? Now. Sure, why not? We need it. We've been so stressed lately. He crossed to me and cupped my face in his hands. I love you, Sage. You know that, right? I looked into his eyes and saw nothing but warmth. Familiar, comfortable, routine warmth. But underneath it, I saw the cracks. The hotel reservation, the deleted messages, the blue box. And I saw the way his thumb had a small callus that he didn't have before, the kind you get from gripping a phone too tight, day after day, hiding something. I know, I said, and I kissed him on the cheek. I love you too, Jake. It was the biggest lie I'd ever told. Because the truth was, I didn't know who I loved anymore. I didn't know who Jake was. And I didn't know if I was the victim or the villain in the story I was about to write. But I was about to find out. That night, while Jake slept beside me, I went through his phone. I found the messages, dozens of them, flirtatious, explicit, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. The name was Tara, a woman from his gym. I read every single one. Then I screenshotted them all, sent them to a secure folder on my phone, and deleted my tracks from his device. When I lay back down, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jake stirred, mumbled something in his sleep, and rolled over to put his arm around me. I let him hold me, and I started planning. Because if my husband thought he could betray me and get away with it, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I wasn't the kind of woman who broke. I was the kind who rebuilt. And I was going to build something so beautiful, so unshakable, that Jake would never be able to tear it down. But first, I needed to know the full truth. And I knew exactly who to call. I pulled out my phone, typed a single message to Ryan. Asterisk tomorrow. Can we meet? I need your help. Asterisk. His reply came within seconds. Asterisk. Already on my way. I'll be at the coffee shop on 4th at 8 a.m. Just you and me. Asterisk. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed. Asterisk, see you then. Asterisk. And I closed my eyes, listening to my husband's steady breathing, and let myself imagine a world where I didn't have to pretend. A world where I could be wanted. Truly wanted. A world where the person who held me didn't flinch. I fell asleep with Ryan's name on my lips. And when I woke up, I knew exactly what I had to do. Asterisk, asterisk, chapter 3. The gathering storm, asterisk, asterisk. The coffee shop on 4th was quiet at 8 a.m., the kind of quiet that felt almost sacred. I spotted Ryan in the corner booth before he saw me. He was nursing a black coffee, scrolling through his phone with the same guarded expression I remembered from the ER. When he looked up and caught my eye, the guard dropped, just for a second, long enough for me to see something raw and unguarded underneath. You came, he said, standing as I approached. I said I would. I slid into the booth across from him. Thanks for meeting me. Sage, I'd meet you at 3 a.m. in a blizzard if you asked. He said it lightly, but his eyes were dead serious. What's going on? I took a breath and laid it all out. The screenshots from Jake's phone, the hotel confirmation, the deleted messages with Tara, the way he'd flinched when I hugged him, the new cologne, the callus on his thumb from gripping a phone too tightly. Ryan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and let out a low whistle. That's a lot of evidence for one night. I haven't even started on the financials yet. Good instinct. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Here's what you need to do. First, don't confront him. Not yet. Cheaters get defensive and destroy evidence. You need to build a case so airtight that he can't talk his way out. I already have screenshots. Screenshots can be faked. You need originals. Bank statements, credit card charges, GPS location history if you can get it. And you need to document everything without him knowing. I nodded, my stomach churning. How do I do that without him catching on? Ryan pulled out his phone and tapped a few times, then slid it across the table. There's a program. Runs in the background on any device to IT logs, keystrokes, screenshots, location data. I can set it up remotely if you can get me his laptop for 10 minutes. That's illegal, isn't it? It's a gray area, but if you're the account holder and the device is in your shared home, it's often admissible in divorce proceedings. I'd check with a lawyer first, but as a starting point, it'll give you the truth. He paused. The question is, do you want the truth or do you want to stay in the dark? I thought about Jake's smile this morning, the way he'd kissed my forehead like nothing was wrong, the way he'd said I love you like a reflex. I want the truth, I said. All of it. Then let's get to work. We spent the next hour making a plan. Ryan would come over later that week while Jake was at work, install the monitoring software, and help me back up every file on the shared home computer. I'd start tracking Jake's comings and goings, noting every discrepancy, and I'd find a divorce attorney, quietly, without any paper trail Jake could stumble on. You're good at this, I said halfway through. Have you done this before? Ryan's jaw tightened. My ex-fiancée, she cheated with my best friend. I found out the hard way, walked in on them. And oh, evidence, no preparation. She cleaned out her joint account and disappeared. He met my eyes. I learned the hard way that you have to be smarter than they are. I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. I'm sorry. Ancient history, but it taught me that betrayal isn't about anger. It's about strategy. If you're going to survive it, you have to think 3 moves ahead. And what's my next move? Act normal. Be the wife he expects. Let him think he's getting away with it. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, featherlight. And when you're ready, you drop the hammer. My phone buzzed. Jake. Asterisk, hey babe. My brother is coming overnight. He needs to crash for a few days. Hope that's okay. Asterisk. I showed Ryan the message. He read it, then raised an eyebrow. Your brother-in-law? The one who tried to borrow money last Christmas and never paid it back. The same? And Jake didn't ask, he told you. He always does. I typed back a cheerful asterisk, sure. Can't wait. Asterisk and pocketed the phone. That's the second thing I need to talk to you about, Jake's family. They've been circling our house like vultures for years. His brother Derek is a train wreck, lost his job, living off credit cards. And his parents keep hinting that we should help out because we have a spare bedroom. And Jake agrees? Jake thinks I'm being selfish. He says family comes first, but I've watched them take and never give back. And now, I stopped a horrible thought crystallizing. What if he's been giving them money behind my back? What if that's why he's been so evasive about our accounts? Ryan's expression turned grim. That would explain the hotel charges. Maybe not all of them, but some he could be using cash advances or separate cards. You need to check your joint statements going back at least 6 months. I will. I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Tonight, I'll start with a laptop. You can come over tomorrow while he's at work. I'll be there. He squeezed my hand once, then let go. Sage, one more thing. When you find out the full scope, and you will, you're going to feel like your entire marriage was a lie. That's normal. But don't let it break you. You're stronger than this. I looked at him, this near stranger who'd seen me at my most pathetic and still showed up with coffee and strategy and steady eyes. Why are you helping me, Ryan? Really? He was quiet for a moment then. Because I've been where you are, and because he stopped, shook his head. Because I think you deserve someone who actually sees you, not the wife, not the caretaker. You. I didn't have words for that, so I just nodded, gathered my things, and walked out into the cold morning air with his words burning in my chest. That evening, Derek showed up with a duffel bag and a story about his landlord kicking him out. Just a week, Sage, I swear, he said, already making himself at home on our couch. I've got a job interview on Monday, and then I'll be back on my feet. Jake clapped him on the shoulder. Of course, man. Stay as long as you need. We've got the space. I bit my tongue. We didn't have the space. Our spare room was my home office, where I worked freelance on the weekends. But Jake had already volunteered it, and I knew from experience that arguing would only lead to a fight. Let me get you some towels, I said, and escaped upstairs. In our bedroom, I pulled out my laptop and started digging through our joint account. IT took me 30 minutes to find it, a recurring monthly transfer of $500 to an account I didn't recognize. The name on the statement was D. Carver, Derek's full name. $500 a month for the past 8 months, total for $1,000 that I never knew about. My hands were shaking as I scrolled further, more transfers, smaller ones, to his parents, and then, buried in the credit card statements, charges at hotels and restaurants that I'd never been to. Dates that matched Jake's business trips. I screenshotted everything and sent it to my private folder. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Jake. I closed the laptop and pasted a smile on my face as he walked in. Hey, he said. Thanks for being cool about Derek. I know he's a lot. It's fine. Family helps family. He kissed my cheek, and I felt nothing. No warmth, no connection. Just the mechanical press of lips on skin. I'm gonna order pizza, he said. You want your usual? Sure. He left. I stared at the closed door and let the mask slip. $4,000, money that could have gone toward the baby fund we'd been saving for. Money that was supposed to be ours. He'd given it away without a word. And the hotels. Those charges weren't for business. They were for her. I picked up my phone and texted Ryan. Asterisk found the money trail. He's been giving his brother $500 a month behind my back. Also hotel charges I never knew about. You were right. Asterisk. His reply came fast. Asterisk keep digging. And Sage, stay calm. He's going to get sloppy. You just have to be ready. Asterisk. I took a deep breath, steadied my pulse, and went downstairs to eat pizza with my husband and his parasite brother. 3 days later, Ryan showed up at noon while Jake was at work. Derek was supposedly out job hunting. I let him in through the back door, heart pounding. You have 10 minutes before my neighbor's daily walk, I whispered. She's nosy. Ryan was already moving toward the home office. He plugged a small USB drive into Jake's laptop, typed a series of commands, and waited. His face was intent, focused, utterly professional. Done, he said, pulling the drive out. It'll run silently in the background. Every keystroke, every login, every email, all forwarded to a secure cloud account you can access from anywhere. That's it. That's it. Now, show me what else you found. I pulled up my folder of screenshots. Ryan scrolled through them, his expression darkening with each one. The transfers to his brother are bad enough. But look at this. He pointed to a charge from a jewelry store. You didn't get any jewelry recently, did you? No. Then he bought something for someone else. He met my eyes. Sage, this is evidence of an ongoing affair, not just a one-night thing. He's been spending on her for months. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I'd suspected, but seeing it laid out like that in black and white, in charges and transfers, was a whole different level of betrayal. What do I do? I whispered. You keep gathering, you don't confront until you have everything, and you talk to a lawyer, today, if possible. He pulled out his phone. I know a woman who handles high net worth divorces. She's discreet, ruthless, and she'll get you what you deserve. He gave me the number. I programmed it into my contacts with trembling fingers. Ryan, I said, looking up at him, why are you still here? You've done more than enough. You could have walked away days ago. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, clean, subtle, nothing like Jake's cheap new scent. Because I'm not going anywhere, Sage. His voice was low, rough. Not until you're safe, not until you're free, and not until you know, really know, that you deserve better. I opened my mouth to respond, but he shook his head. Don't say anything. Not yet. Just let me help. That's all I'm asking. I nodded, because words would have broken me. He left through the back door. I stood in the empty office and stared at Jake's laptop, at the silent monitoring software now living inside it, and I felt something shift in my chest. Grief, still, but underneath it, something harder. Something that flickered with cold, sharp determination. Jake had taken our marriage, our money, our future, and handed them to other people without a second thought. He had chosen his family, his mistress, his secrets over me. And I was done being the one who paid the price. I pulled up my contacts and dialed the lawyer's number. The conversation lasted 45 minutes. By the end, I had a plan, a timeline, and a growing sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in years. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Pamela, laid it out clearly. Continue gathering evidence without confrontation. Separate our finances as much as possible without raising suspicion. Document every interaction with Jake and his family. And when the time is right, file for divorce with a full financial disclosure and a demand for spousal support. You've been the primary caretaker of the household for years, Pamela said. You're entitled to half the assets, and given his infidelity, you have grounds for a favorable settlement. But only if you play this smart. I can do smart, I said. Good. Then call me next week with an update. And Sage, don't let him see you coming. I hung up and looked at the clock. Jake would be home in 2 hours. I had time. I sat down at the laptop, opened the monitoring dashboard Ryan had set up, and watched as a new email notification popped up on Jake's account. From Tara to m@fitness.com. Subject, last night was incredible. I clicked it open. Asterisk Jake, I can't stop thinking about you. I know we said we'd keep it casual, but you're all I think about. Can we meet again this weekend? My place. No interruptions. Asterisk. I read it 3 times. Then I took a screenshot, filed it away, and closed the laptop. When Jake walked through the door at 6 p.m., I was in the kitchen, making his favorite pasta. I kissed him hello, asked about his day, and listened to his lies like they were water off my back. Great day, he said. Got a lot done. Good, I said, stirring the sauce. By the way, I was thinking, maybe we should take that trip you mentioned. Just the 2 of us. No distractions. His face lit up. Really? That's great, Sage. I'll book something this week. Perfect, I said. I can't wait. And I meant it, because the trip would give me uninterrupted access to his phone, his laptop, his everything. And by the time we came back, I'd have enough evidence to burn his world to the ground. I smiled at him over the stove, and he smiled back, oblivious. And I felt nothing but the cold, beautiful clarity of a woman who had finally stopped being the victim. Because I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the author of my own story. And this chapter was just beginning. Chapter 4, the first domino. The monitoring software was a gift I didn't deserve and couldn't afford to waste. Over the next 3 days, I watched Jake's digital life unfold like a horror movie I couldn't look away from. Every keystroke, every email, every late night message to Tara. He was sloppy, comfortable even, because he'd never once considered that I might be watching. On Tuesday morning, while Jake was in the shower, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and scrolled through the cache. Asterisk, babe, I can't wait to see you this weekend. I've got us a suite at the Ritz. Champagne, roses, the works. Asterisk. Asterisk, you're so good to me, Jake. What about Sage? Doesn't she wonder where you are? Asterisk. Asterisk, she thinks I'm on a fishing trip with my brother. She doesn't question anything anymore. She's checked out. Asterisk. I read that last line 3 times. Asterisk checked out. Asterisk the audacity. The absolute, breathtaking audacity of a man who'd spent the past 8 months draining our joint account, sleeping with another woman, and lying to my face, and had the nerve to call me checked out. I took a screenshot, filed it, drank my coffee. When Jake came downstairs, freshly shaved and smelling like that unfamiliar cologne, I smiled and handed him a plate of eggs. "Big day?" I asked. "Always." He kissed my forehead. "Hey, I might be late tonight. Derek needs help with some paperwork." "Of course. I'll save you dinner." He left. I watched his car disappear around the corner, then pulled up the next set of files. That's when I found the email that changed everything. From jake.carver@personal.com to Preston and Associates Legal. Subject: Draft divorce agreement, confidential. My coffee cup slipped from my fingers and shattered on the tile floor. I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, at the words that couldn't possibly be real. Asterisk, per our consultation, I'd like to proceed with drafting the petition grounds, irreconcilable differences, custody, none, no children. Asset division, I propose a 70-30 split in my favor, citing financial contributions and her lack of steady income. Additionally, I'd like to include a clause regarding her alleged emotional instability. She's been distant and erratic lately, and I have witnesses to support this. Asterisk, alleged emotional instability. Witnesses. My hands were shaking as I scrolled down. He'd attached a timeline of fabricated incidents, my depression, my paranoia, my unreasonable accusations. All of it designed to paint me as the unstable one, all of it a preemptive strike to make sure I got nothing. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to destroy me. I sat in the broken glass and let myself feel the full weight of it. The rage, the betrayal, the crushing realization that the man I'd loved for 23 years had been building a case against me while I was still trying to save our marriage. Then I picked up my phone and called Ryan. He was at my house within 20 minutes, climbing through the back window because I'd forgotten to leave the door unlocked. "Sage, you're bleeding." He grabbed my hand, turning it over to reveal a thin cut across my palm. "What happened?" "Glass that I dropped a cup." I pulled